now going to look at the mountain and motor development, which was referred to earlier on within the session. So think of the mountain as a motor skill development where there's various types of movement skills or motor skills are developed in particular order with very specific different levels of development. These development levels are numbered and labelled with appropriate ages, although there's maybe some overlap with the levels and variation, among individuals. So if you can see from this diagram, you've got the basic locomotor, grasping, manipulative skills, control skills and reflexes from infancy. Then we then move into the key fundamental motor or movement skill stage where we should be developing those key movement skills. This is generally focusing from 2 to 8 years of age. As you can see from this diagram, the middle section is basically an athletic proficiency barrier. So what that means is if kids don't develop these key basic skills, they're going to hit that proficiency barrier and not be able to engage in those traditional sports and games. Or they can engage in them, but not be as successful as someone or a child who's developed these movement skills. So this is basically, that traditional sports phase or games is where we're starting to get children involved from childhood to adolescence in sport. And then finally, the final stage is developing physical literacy and performance in specific sports, and this is adolescence to adulthood. So it's whether we get the performer at a performance level and they end up going into elite or competitive sport, or whether it's just purely that they're enjoying sport and taking part in a recreational setting. So some key points around this mountain of motor development. Infants and children and adolescents don't climb the mountain of motor skill development without some help. That is, motor skills cannot magically develop and appear just based on maturation. So key important factors considering this development is the environment around the children, which has a powerful impact on how they move. So basically humans are born with pre-adapted motor behaviours that predispose certain reflex and basic movements. But these movements are reinforced and modified by the surroundings and environment and the learning process. So if we create an environment where kids can develop these movement skills and motor skills, this is basically going to reinforce and modify and develop them further. So important factors, parents and adults and coaches should be mindful of a child's motor development and provide a variety of developmentally appropriate experiences to support and help their children develop a variety of motor skills as they move up that mountain of motor development. There's been some key research which basically states that children who possess inadequate motor skills are often relegated to a life of exclusion from organised free play experiences of their peers, and subsequently to a lifetime of inactivity because of their frustrations in early movement behaviour. So, prime example of this, kids playing in the playground, all think back to your primary school years, was there a kid in your class who, was always picked last, was never involved, or, in classes or in playground environment, we weren't particularly happy when they were put on your team because they're not very good. Was that because they weren't very good, or was it because they weren't very good because they didn't have those opportunities to develop? They didn't have the support of parents. They didn't have environments where those motor skills were developed. So the importance of working with children and youth, developing children, is ensuring that everyone has equal opportunities to develop these key motor skills and hopefully can lead to successful sports participation. So, research states it's imperative to acquire a wide variety of skills of the locomotor, object control and stability before we're moving up the pyramid to levels of combined skills and finding sport-specific skills. If children do not require a good repertoire of fundamental movement or motor skills, they confront a proficiency barrier that makes it more difficult for them to be successful at higher levels of skill acquisition. This is by Branter 2010. So this pyramid here, as you can see on screen, basically demonstrates what I've just discussed. You've got the reflex and spontaneous movements at the bottom there, which this obviously mirrors the other diagram I showed a couple of slides earlier. You've got those basic developmental of movement skills, the proficiency barrier, combining skills, and then sport specific. So if individuals lack these basic skills, they encounter that difficulty in moving up that mountain and that ultimately hit that proficiency barrier. So I'm going to discuss this pyramid and break it down in more detail, which again links back to the original diagram with the levels. Both diagrams are basically stating the same thing. So level 1 is reflex and basic physical control skills. So the first level of the mountain and motor development, it represents infancy from birth to about 2 years of age. This development period is characterised by orderly appearance and subsequent disappearance of numerous reflexes or involuntary movements that infants make in response to specific stimuli. A palmar grip or grasp reflex, being able to grasp onto something. The orderly sequence of these reflexes helps parents and paediatricians assess normal physical development in infants, so identifying these key stages of development. Postural control skills such as rolling, sitting up, standing upright, and basic locomotor skills such as creeping, crawling and walking are all important motor skills or milestones observed in all infants as they begin to interact with the environment in goal-directed movements. The other aspects of motor development in this initial level is around grasping and manipulative skills, or reaching or grabbing manipulative objects such as toys, manipulation of toys, opportunities and space for development of basic locomotor skills, enhance child's motor development at this early stage. So even holding onto a fork can fit into kind of this key points of development of infancy. The second level within those diagrams is the fundamental motor skill or movement skill for between 2 and 8 years. At this level, in our mountain of motor development, children should learn to perform a wide variety of basic skills such as locomotor, manipulative and stability skills called fundamental or movement skills. Fundamental or movement skills are basic movement skills that are minor or kind of subparts of all sport skills. They are termed fundamental because they serve as the building blocks for a child's learning of sport-specific skills. Multiple examples of these building blocks are shown in the diagram, including throwing, catching, jumping, hopping and striking. Other fundamental skills important to this phase are fine motor skills such as hand-eye coordination, foot-eye coordination, balance, agility, so the ability to change direction and maintain balance, and information processing and decision making such as scanning, selecting and appropriate cues in games and play and so forth. So as you can see from the diagram, we're working at these level 2, that fundamental motor skill development stage. So as looked at previously, we've got this triad or kind of 3 key areas of prerequisites participation, and the fundamental skills are part of this triad of ensuring that an athlete or child is able to perform a prerequisite to take part in sport.